Today we will be playing Nerus. This came out in 2019. In addition to it having a prologue, it also has 2 chapters. Prologue, the Purple Manor, the first and last move. Sax is a young safe-shifter who commits some mistakes as compensation for his crimes. He is sent to serve as a warper under the wing of Nerus, a great safe-shifter. But as his relationship with Nerus gets stronger and strange events start creeping into his new life, Sax comes to a realization about himself. Difficulty, merciless, for a beginner is nothing but a one-sided assault. Leaves and branches broke under my bare feet as I walked deeper into the dark forest. A small chill ran down my spine as the cold but gentle wind nudged me forward. The darkness that enveloped me seemed to expand endlessly. I had lost track of how long ago I reached the edge of the forest and decided to dive into its depths. However, that didn't bother me, for I knew I would arrive at my destination sooner or later. I wasn't in a hurry. If that was the case, I would have walked there. As a matter of fact, I had decided to make my way there on foot for additional time for myself, to prepare for what was coming. I had gotten myself to quite a predicament back then, and so I got summoned by my great safe-shifter in order to discuss how I would make amends. Although considering my abilities and that they had asked me to bring some clothes and other everyday life items, I could make a good guess as to what my punishment would be. If I was right, that would mean things weren't going to be too bad. But that knowledge hardly prevented a knot from forming in my throat, a foreboding feeling that what awaited me would be much worse than what I was anticipating loomed over me. To make matters worse, I kept recalling the scene that had taken place in my room but a few hours ago. After that, I would prefer to run away, perhaps to hide for a while or even look for a new place to call home. Unfortunately, not turning myself in wasn't an option. Refusing to meet a great safe-shifter when summoned will only make my situation dire. And if the safe-shifter chose a son and abandoned me as a result, then who would take me in? There was no place in the world for us that wasn't with our own kin. I knew that well. About as fancy as I expected, although it was a bit smaller. Once I drew close to the end of the forest, I was greeted by the sight of a tall building, its walls covered by thick vines. Through the plant life, a few windows could be seen. However, it was too dark for me to make out anything else. Can't say I appreciate how useless that place makes my night vision feel. Why does it have to be staying at such a gloomy place? I didn't see any doors, so I proceeded to walk my way around the mansion in order to find the entrance. It didn't take me long to arrive at what seemed to be the front entrance. There I saw a fellow safe-shifter standing by the door. He had a peculiar appearance. His bald head was covered in yellow worn scales. Pointy, crooked teeth stuck out from his mouth. He had small but bulbous brown eyes. His fancy black uniform, as well as his solemn look in his eyes, made it evident he was a servant of the house. He had been waiting for me, I assumed. I cleared my throat and approached him. As soon as he saw me, those pointy teeth disappeared back into his mouth. Excuse me, this is the residence of Nerus, yes? Indeed, we have been expecting you, Lord Sax. Would you like me to carry your luggage? Yes, here you go. Good. The master is currently working. I will take your luggage to your new quarters and inform him of your arrival afterward. But first, allow me to guide you to the parlor, where you may wait for him. New quarters, huh? Of course, lead the way. We entered the mansion, stepping into a long, dark hallway. We walked until we reached a tall door to our right, near the end of the corridor. He opened the door, revealing a grand room, decorated with expensive-looking furniture and walls with intricate designs made in a solid metal. Go in, please. Now, if you'll excuse me, the servant left me alone in the, to be frank, somewhat eerie parlor. But it wasn't just that room. Pretty much the entire place was very dimly lit, giving it a ghastly vibe. After a few seconds of just standing there, looking somewhat dumb, I decided to make myself comfortable on one of the nearby sofas. First thing I took notice of as I climbed onto it was how big the sofa and everything else in the house was. It wasn't surprising. It was known Nerus was a huge man, even at his smallest size. I had only ever seen him in video footage up to this point, but even there, he stood out because of his height alone. But still, seeing firsthand the place where he lived, as well as the size of the furniture he used, made me realize I hadn't gasped just how huge he was. And it wasn't long before the man himself showed up. The door swung open, and from the other side, an immense saddle with 4 piercing red eyes emerged. But I didn't see them as eyes, no. What I perceived were 4 wings of unnaturally colored fire floating in sun upon otherwise empty pits. I must confess the sight was so intimidating my body sank further into the sofa on its own. It was an appropriate reaction. However, as the silhouette stepped deeper into the room, the saddles vanished to reveal the abundant pale fur under, as well as a fancy black and red suit. His full appearance was quite the sight to behold in person. It paralyzed me, now not out of fear, but admiration. Maybe this aura of grandness was what allowed him to get so popular among those acquainted with him, I thought. You must be Sax. I welcome you to my humble dwelling. His voice was deep, strong, and it carried a regal feeling with it. Yeah. Nerus blinked, but remained still otherwise. He was waiting for me to do something, much to my confusion. It would seem that in my awe for his gigantic visage, I had forgotten my manners. As soon as I realized my mistake, I jumped from the sofa, landed on the floor on one knee. I'm sorry. Thank you for having me, great shapeshifter. I then brought one hand to my chest and bowed deeply. Nerus sighed as if exasperated by my greeting and signaled me to get back to my feet. He sat on the sofa across the room from mine. Although a bit disheartened by his cold attitude, I obeyed his command. I understand you have been causing trouble for your family. A bad look for them, but especially for yourself considering the role they have come to fill. I heard you even managed to get the angels involved. Yes, I'll be frank, sir. Things got out of hand. It wasn't my intention for my plan to go this far. Nerus paused, listening to me. Then, without doing so much as change his expression, he continued speaking. I imagined that was the case. One would need to be a fool to intentionally attract the angels to his fellow shapeshifters. Nevertheless, it being an accident does not make the situation any less severe. Yes, you're right. Now, we are here to discuss your transgression and the investigation regarding these have already concluded. Let us get to the point. Despite you putting it to a mischievous use, it came to my attention you were fairly skilled at warping magic, correct? The sudden change in topic made me raise an eyebrow, but I soon figured what he was getting at. It seemed my hunch had been spot on despite my worries. I felt waves of relief washing over me, but I tried to not let it show. Yes, that's right. Yours is a rare, yet highly demanded magic. Normally, we would settle this in a different manner, but given the circumstances, I decided it would be convenient to allow you to train your abilities in a more constructive manner, that is, under my surveillance. Is that so? But surely you have a warper here already? Or will they act as my teacher? I do not want you to think I'm taking advantage of the situation, but it is quite convenient you arrived here at this time. Our warper became indisposed not long ago. But let us not stray from the main topic. I am sore on time at the moment. Okay, I understand. Now, be warned. You shall not be given special treatment. Underperform or commit buffoonery again, and I will be forced to give you a more severe punishment. What you did in the long run will not be more than a temporary setback for your family. However, that does not mean a safe sisters should tolerate such mischief. But yes, I understand. Thank you for allowing me to serve you despite what I've done. I bowed my head deeply once again. Yes, I see you are an honest kid. Keep calm. This is what you are told to do, and you will be all right. At that moment, there was a warmth in Nerus' words that contrasted with the rest of his strict, ice-cold persona. I didn't know what to make of it back then, but I was hoping to ask you a few questions, but that will have to wait until another occasion. For now, feel free to go make sure everything is in order with your bed chamber. Go up the stairs and enter the second door to the right. Yes, thank you so much for the hospitality. I jumped off the sofa and started making my way out of the parlor. But when I arrived at the door, I stopped in my tracks and turned around, setting my gaze upon a great safe shifter a few steps behind me. By the way, sir. Yes. No, nothing. It was a dumb question. Well, wouldn't it be good to say something, buffoony enough to earn me a worse punishment on my first day here than I would? I cringed inside in my miserable attempt at comedy, but I tried my best to give him a smile regardless. Nerus looked straight at me. At first it seemed like he wouldn't react at all, but after a few seconds he out, I amused puff. I imagine I must have looked quite surprised and awkward. Had he found that funny, or was he just trying to be kind? Anyhow, figuring I shouldn't take more of his time, I decided to take the fact that he even reacted in a non-negative manner as a victory. I smiled, this time genuinely, and then excused myself from the parlor, setting off to my new room. The bed chamber counted with a king-size bed, a mirror, a couple of drawers, even a small bathroom. However, the first thing that caught my attention was my suitcase resting on the bed. When I opened it, I noticed a servant from earlier had gone through the trouble of moving my clothes to the closet. It was empty except for a few other belongings. For the time being, I opted to close the suitcase and lower it to the floor so I could lie down on the bed. The last few hours had been rather tense. I craved for a bit of respite. It crossed my mind that I was taking the prospect of having my freedom taken away as well as being forced to serve someone else a bit too lightly. But I suppose in a way it had accomplished what I wanted. I didn't care if I had merely moved from one cage to another. Being away from that house, performing a different job was enough for me. Besides, Nerus seemed to be as much of an amicable person as I heard. Cold but compassionate underneath it all. Although perhaps he was acting in his own best interest. The expansion of the safe sector's reach depended on the recruitment of new warpers. So it would be logical if he had taken advantage of the circumstances to make me work for him. The expansion of the safe sector's reach depended on the recruitment of new warpers, so it would be logical if he had taken advantage of the circumstances to make me work for him. No, to be honest, that's exactly what had happened. Maybe his former personal warper wasn't even indisposed, he affirmed, but had been transferred off into preparation for my arrival. But even so, the fact that things had turned out this way was like a blessing to me, especially after being so scared earlier. I believed that he would take good care of me. I felt someone nudging me awake, and once I opened my eyes, I saw the servant's blurry figure standing over me. My apologies for interrupting your sleep, Lord Sass, but the master requests your presence in his study. Of course. Okay, I'll be there right away. Just give me a moment to wake up. The servant bowed and excused himself out of the room. I rubbed my eyes till my vision regained clarity. Then I got up and threw my arms out, stretched until the weight of my limbs melted off. I walked up to the mirror to check my clothes weren't too wrinkled. Since they seemed to be all right, I exited the hallway. The servant was waiting for me there. I followed him to Nerus' study. I apologize for keeping you waiting, Master. Lord Sachs was taking a nap. The servant said as soon as we entered the room. I took all my might, resisting the impulse to give him a furious glare. Nerus had been reading a letter, but upon seeing us coming, he returned it to its envelope and put it away in one of the desk's drawers. Thank you, Severus. You are dismissed. The servant, Severus, bowed to his master and entered the study. Nerus gestured to me to take the seat in front of him. It is worth noting that Nerus' study was ghastly and cold as the rest of the house. At that point, I started wondering if, by any chance, Prologue exposed to the light made his eyes hurt. Well, Sachs, I wish to ask you a few questions to give you a quick rundown of the job you were doing here. Okay? The first question concerns the incident you caused. Oh? Consider this a personal question, but I'm curious about what possessed you to do such a thing. According to your confessing your distaste for your family's work was your motivation, but I find it hard to believe that was the sole factor. No, that is really all there was to it. I started looking him in the eyes. His gaze pierced me like for a dad scanning for something hidden. I had to fight an impulse to look away. But what he said next was, I see. Very well, move on. About your message, I understand it's not a simple teleportation ability, yes. Oh, that's right. It's a bit more specific than that. What I can do is switch the position of two objects that were the same size. I figure you asked because you plan to have me deliver letters, packages, and such. If you are concerned this limitation will get in the way, don't worry. I can switch places with some other object at the destination to deliver whatever you want me to and switch back. It shouldn't be a problem. Good to know. This makes sure to never teleport directly inside the destination, but somewhere nearby. This is advice I give to all warpers. Consider your magic's quirks is especially relevant for you. You do not want to startle anyone or get confused for a thief. Yes, good point. Now then, Nerus proceeded to talk about the worlds I would be visiting, as well about the proper etiquette when interacting with the stage centers that would receive me. He also told me I would need to accompany him to any meetings or speech he attended to, since that would be his main means of transportation. He gesticulated with his hands the entire time during the explanation. Not much was normal, but now that I was close to him, I realized there was something off about it. A glance at him was enough to tell there should be considerable strength and weight behind his movements. Yet he handled himself with such gentleness and grace that every time he let his hands fall on the desk or touch something, it didn't feel any different to if I had done it instead. It was as if I was speaking with someone not much bigger than me, despite him nearly doubling me in height. Obviously, he shouldn't go around smashing everything in his path, but with all due respect, all this restraint struck me as unnatural. I couldn't help but wonder how long it took him to attain that level of control. Sachs, are you listening? Oh, I'm sorry. I was zoning out. We would have to do something about that. Several high-ranking state senators and great state senators will take offense if you zone out when addressed by them. Yeah. That should be about everything. Do you have any questions? So about the etiquette thing. It sounds complicated, so I'll need help to get it down. Will you help me practice? I said with a smile. If you need a lesson in etiquette, usually it's Severus who handles that. I see. I will have jobs for you before long. Recommend you go look for him post-haste. Understood. If that's everything, then I'll be on my way, sir. Thank you for everything. Now you'll excuse me. Yes, take care. How curious. Once the door clicked closed, I opened the drawer once more. The first thing that came into sight was a letter I'd been reading before Sachs and Cyril showed up. The letter had been delivered by another warper a few hours ago. It was from Sachs's father. He seemed worried sick that his son would attempt to cause a ruckus here as well. and he asked me to be comprehensive, to keep an eye on him, and other requests of that nature. To me, it looked as if he was trying to save face, though. However, he did mention something interesting. I moved the letter aside and dug through the other documents until I found an old folder near the bottom. I took it out and opened it. It was a report concerning amnesia cases. Now, since this was an issue that affected only safe sisters, I assumed most people would require explanations of what this amnesia was. It was a condition discovered shortly after the Battle of the Aeon, about 200 years ago at this time. It was not some sort of virus nor contagious disease but a birth condition. A corporeal being's self has two components, their soul and their essence, and their matter, what's eternal and what's temporary. But healthy state sisters and angels too had the ability to violate this principle. In addition to being unaging, we were able to keep our essence in the event our bodies were destroyed. Thanks to this, we were able to survive our souls and gather power that would regenerate our bodies. This was the power of remembrance. It wouldn't have been an exaggeration to call us immortal. However, the amnesia changed all of that. There started resurfacing cases of state sisters who found themselves unable to regenerate, or rather whose souls had lost that capacity to remember their accidents. The amnesiac souls acted like mortal souls, looking for new bodies to inhabit people born with no memories or sense of who they once were. The first generation of amnesiacs grew older and died of old age as well. Until then, the concept of us being affected by the passage of time had been unthinkable, but the illnesses eventually stopped manifesting this way, leaving only the forgetting symptom. This is what we call the second generation of amnesiacs. In his letter, Sax's father had confessed to me that his son belonged to the second generation. I did not understand the page squabble between high-ranking state sisters, but I suspected that he had decided to hide that detail in order to avoid some kind of perceived humiliation. Since his son was now under my care, he must have felt pressed to tell me so I would not find out the hard way in the event tragedy befell Sax. I found it ridiculous, to be honest. I assumed Sax was made to hide it as well. I should request he is added to the records next time I send this back to Nominal, although it would be wise to consult with a doctor that examined him first. I will have to write back to his father and ask for more information. I put the folder back in its place, closed the drawer, and opened a different one to retrieve an envelope and a blank piece of paper. Then I grabbed my pen and started writing. Still, this is not answering my questions. Well, Sax will be living here from now on. There will be plenty of time to learn more about him, and for him to tell me whatever else he is hiding. He did not seem as conceited as the most obnoxious nobles thus far. Perhaps I could ask him directly. But for now, let us wait and see what happens. After I wrote the letter and put it alongside all the correspondence Sax would deliver in the following days, I went back to work. For hours, the forms and documents were all my eyes had paid attention to. From this day, I commanded the hundreds of nobles under my jurisdiction. They in charge would send me reports regarding the gathering of material resources or the harvesting notices. Every day, I would go over the paperwork and sign it. Afterwards, I would send it to Nominal. Then, I would decide how to allocate the resources we had and send new orders to the nobles, who would then mobilize their legions accordingly. Writing a few papers was all I needed to dictate in which direction the web of purification would expand next. I was a spider weaving the strings that would capture the stored souls of mortals. This task required planning, of course, but the way I executed was almost primal. Read, assess, command. Day after day, hour after hour, I would automatically carry out these three actions in an endless loop. A clock doesn't think as it points at the same succession of numbers endlessly, and neither did I. This should be enough for today. The clock's arrows marked an hour left before supper by the time I decided to wrap things up and go outside to the front garden. I was watering my white flowers when I heard someone approaching. It looked like Sax and Sevils had still been practicing on the back. The small shapeshifter let out a surprised exclamation when he saw me. "Oh, hello, sir. Greetings." I nodded in their direction. Sevils bowed to me and then turned to Sax. "Make sure to be at the dining hall in around an hour, Lord Sax." "Sure." Sevils walked into the mansion, but Sax stayed behind. It didn't take long for him to become captivated by the flowers. "Do you take care of the garden by yourself, sir?" "Most of the time, yes. Sevils helps me occasionally. I wasn't aware you could grow this kind of plant in complete darkness." "How do you do it?" "There are ways." Sax clearly wanted to make small talk, but I didn't know what to say. I was drawing a blank. That was all I could get to come out. A bit later I managed to catch an idea in the sea of my consciousness. It was such a simple question that I felt embarrassed for taking so long to come up with it. "Is there any flower that got your attention?" Sax brought a finger to his chin and he looked down at the flowers. To be more specific, he was looking at the ones with the white glow. I was certain he'd say those were his favorites, but then he looked the other side and pointed at the roses. "Call me simple-minded, but I like those." I see." The feather reptile looked at me and then tilted his head, his tongue briefly sticking out of his mouth. "I assume the white ones are your favorites." "Oh, yes." "They are very pretty." Silence settled in shortly. I tried to come up with something else to say, but to no avail. Sax still stayed for a few more minutes before I said he'd go lie down until supper was ready. Feeling a bit hesitant, I nodded and then he went his way. What is wrong with me? I finished with the garden just in time for supper. I put the watering can down, washed and dried my hands with a handkerchief, and walked into the mansion. I sat on the end of the table and Sax decided to sit to my left. Although he shot me a glance every once in a while, he remained silent throughout the supper. The first one to finish was me, but I waited for Sevils to come from the kitchen and collect the dishes before telling him and Sax to have a good night. "Oh, okay, good night." "Sleep well, master." I took off all my clothes before laying down on the bed, staring at the ceiling for a moment before I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, this day would start anew, like it always had countless times. But what I didn't know was that this cycle wouldn't last much longer. So that was the first episode for the Prologue of Nerus. So we got to meet Sax, Sevils, and Nerus. So Nerus gave Sax a rundown of the job that he will be doing. His job is to teleport Nerus to different places for conferences and also to make speeches. Sax will also be teleporting himself to different places to see messages and letters that were made for Nerus, and then he will teleport himself back to Nerus with those messages for him to read. So after Nerus gave Sax a rundown on the job, he picked back up the letter that he was reading. It was from Sax's father, and his father revealed that there could be a tragedy while Sax is in the care of Nerus. And the reason why, because Sax is from a generation of shapeshifters that had some kind of a disease or a birth defect, and while that revelation was made, the screen on the bottom of the screen where the text usually is, it usually has a green shade or color, but it changes to red, like blood, like you were looking at blood or not. You were looking at red blood, not the usual green shade. So, could that foretell what may happen later on with sex? Let me know in the comments. So this is the first episode of the Prologue for Nerus. I'll be doing more episodes on the Prologue in the days and weeks to come. I also do plan on doing chapters 1 and 2. So all the information for Nerus is in the description box. So that's all I have for now. Thanks very much for tuning in and watching. Goodbye.